Hey everybody, it is Callous back with more Callous Invitational 6 Winners Bracket content here in round 2. These guys both obviously 1-0. It is UD and Umbry, two players that I am very fond of as a whole. Really think both these players have a lot of game, do a lot of things very well, and I'm super looking forward to this set. 2-0 start, UD has done before but hasn't done in a while. He's looking for a bounce back from an 0-2 last year. Umbry had an uncharacteristic 1-2 exit in her debut last year, but she had some of the hardest opponents, arguably the toughest string of 3 opponents of anybody in the tournament last year. I think it was a bit of a fluke, and I think she's in a great position to have a great run this year. But what better way to do that than to start off 2-0 and then get yourself a round 3 bye? Because remember, round 3 coming up, winners don't play, and the lower bracket has to slug it out and eliminate each other. So this would be a great round, an advantageous round to get the W, and I'm expecting a great match between two players that I'm very fond of. Here's game 1 in their best of 3. UD's on the bottom, Umbry's on the top. Usually, Scarm lead is indicative of some kind of jolt spike stack, so that's what I'm anticipating from UD here. And Umbry, at first I thought she was switching it up and going with offense when you see the lead Hera, and maybe it still is. It could be an offensive Hariyama. Porygon 2 is not usually on stall teams, but I'm not totally clear for Umbry. The thing with her is that she almost exclusively plays stall teams, which, if it works, it works. But that seems to be her deal, and that does make her a little bit predictable in the builder. So if she's switching it up here, and I don't know if she is. Milo and Hari, for me, are like stally Mons, but like Heracross and P2 are kind of offensive Mons. I don't know what this team is. Is this an original creation? Sometimes she borrows teams from other people. I don't think she builds in this tier, so I think somebody had to have built this, but I'm not sure who. I definitely don't recognize this team from Umbry. For UD, it doesn't look like what I thought it was either. This could either be some TSS squad with like Regice over Blissey, or hell, maybe it even has both. Or it could still be offense. It could be stuff like, Meta, Doug, Mence, or something in the back for UD. It could still be an aggro team. There's a guard to protect spikes, which makes sense given the lead Scarm. Rock Slide there, big chunk. Doesn't have lefties either. Might be looking at a CB Heracross here. Based on the damage, it certainly feels that way. Good prediction, though, to stay in and Rock Slide again, knowing that Aurora was coming. That was potentially risky for Umbry. The Hera could have taken big damage from a Surf or something to that effect. I'm not entirely clear what Umbry's team is. I think she's brought what is still actually a stall team that just happens to have a lead CB Mon, a lead Hera. But the rest of it seems fairly defensive. 3 layers of spikes down. It's unusual to me that Umbry's team doesn't have a spinner with 5 grounded pokes, not a single spikes resistance or immunity. Maybe it's just last poke dull. That's all I can think of here. Because, man, her team is very spikes vulnerable. That being said, Umbry's on the board first. She gets the kill on the Swampert. And now Gara's going to explode into Hariyama, but the damage is not that exciting. There is a follow-up Doug, though, that'll suffice. So it is effectively a trade, but I'm sure Umbry's fine with that. Hariyama's done its job. And it is Last Poke Doll, which is one of the only things that make sense here. Gets a rapid spin off, knows that she can do that safely. The guard just exploded, so it's obviously not going to be around to block rapid spin. That's going to put Umbry, I believe, in a favorable position here. Just straight up 5-4 lead. Spikes are gone, can't be reestablished. It looks like the only offensive Mon left is this Regice here, who skillfully dodges Hypnosis. You know that a big, fat block of ice is obviously going to be nimble, able to dodge attacks. And now Claydol back in on a T-Bolt. That's a bad boom for Umbry. I get why she did it, but it was telegraphed, and UD sniffed it out really well. She ends up booming her full health Claydol into, 14% on a paralyzed Scarm. Obviously not a good trade, and perhaps a little bit hasty. I believe I criticized Umbry in the previous round as well for an explosion specifically that I didn't like and that I thought was premature. So I don't know if it's just coincidence or if my subjective opinion is wrong, but perhaps that is one little hole in Umbry's ADV game. Perhaps she doesn't always boom at times that are correct or is a little bit premature with clicking boom. Nevertheless, Umbry's position is still favorable in this game. Regice is a bit of a threat, but I think it's the only threat. That's the thing. I guess the Dugtrio over time, especially if the P2 does go down here, I guess the Dugtrio could do something. And it's Last Poke Bliss from UD, so unless that is like a Calm Mind Bliss, for example, which it is, so okay, he actually does have more than one way to get some meaningful offense going. And certainly dodging the CB Megahorn helps, but unfortunately, he can't dodge it twice, nor should he mathematically. So Bliss is not going to be a factor. Dougie's stuck on Aerial Ace here, is going to let the P2 in, which might just click Ice Beam here. Aerial Ace. No, he is going to try to recover, but he's going to have to click Ice Beam eventually because he's trapped and he's toxic. So it's going to add up at some point. He's going to have to actually kill the Dugtrio. I think we're going to start seeing that now. He does recover again, but I don't know where he thinks this is going. P2 is going to eventually... There we go. He stops recovering, he goes for Ice Beam, and now Umbry's in pretty good shape, I think. I think she basically just needs to not get really unlucky with the end game here. I mean, Pouring on 2 is about to die, but Milo should win this the vast majority of the time, given its current position. Celebi can come in as well. Goes for Perish. Huh. Is that better than Leech Seeding here? Yeah, I guess it could be. Yeah, because, I mean, you can get Thunderbolted down. Scary full power there for Milo, but Regice full powered behind it, so that works. 2 full powers for Milo, but that's fine. It survives the T-Bolt. All it has to do is avoid a 3rd full power and click Recover. Or that. Wow, that's really unlucky for Umbry at the end. She got the bone there. Yeah, man, it's 3 full powers in a row there for the Milotic to lose that game. Now, granted, on one of them, if she gets a recover off, maybe UD crits anyway. As it turns out, results-based, he didn't. But there is the out, even with recover, to crit your way out if you're UD. But it's very, very heavily, even after the Perish song, very, very heavily mathematically favorable for UD to not win that game. He needed those powers. Umbry should have won that the majority of the time, and she got very unlucky with the 3 powers near the end there. So that was very haxy. UD should be pretty happy with how that went. He's running very well. He's playing well and bringing cool teams. And he's 1 game away from a 2-0 start and a round 3 bye. Like I said, Umbry got kind of robbed there. Very unlucky for her. So here is the second game. UD bottom side, Umbry on the top. Lead Zapdos is normal. But lead Bliss is interesting, and it's not crazy. The reason that people, and this is kind of an older trend, it's kind of faded now, but the reason that people had been leading Bliss primarily is because if Zapdug is really popular, and I don't feel like it's super popular right now, but if it is, when it was, you can't Zapdug the Bliss if you just lead with the Bliss. The idea was, previously, Blissey would come into Zapdos a lot, and then when the Bliss switches in and you Baton Pass, you get it with Doug, and then pending an immediate crit or freeze with Ice Beam, you always just kill the Bliss via beat up. So this is designed to circumvent that. If you lead the Bliss, you can't just BP to Doug because you would come in on an Ice Beam or a Seismic Toss or a Toxic or what have you, and then all of a sudden you don't have that out anymore because beat up is not a one-hit KO, and then whatever Blissey follows up with kills you. So that's the thought process there, and I don't actually hate it. Now granted, it's not some genius innovation. There's obviously some drawbacks. Blissey is not an exciting lead against things like Mance, most T-Tars, and so forth, but there is a little bit of merit to it. So moving along, we have what appears to be a pretty standard Skarn Bliss TSS with the one major, this is not standard, the major sticking point here being Gyarados. And then Umbry, on the other hand, seems to have brought, looks like she's got a balance here. Might just be like a Doug Starmie in the back. It's like a very well-known team here for Umbry. She is going to pick off Blissey here, pending a critter freeze immediately. And UD gets neither, so Blissey is going to die here after passing to the Doug trio behind the substitute. Early advantage for Umbry. Zard comes in. That's not what I was expecting. Here's a Zoomer team for Umbry. Like I said, if it had been Starmie in the back, that is a known squad, but that is not what we're looking at here. We've got a Charizard, which is really cool, and that's going to net itself a kill. So Umbry furthers her lead. She's now got the 6-4 advantage as Bliss comes in. Hidden Power, unexciting from what must be a defensive or maybe even a rest Gyarados to be doing that little damage. And man, this matchup doesn't seem great at all. UD bringing a Magneton, which is usually a great call into Umbry because she's very Skarmory heavy. But the one game, right, where she does not bring Skarmory, there's Magneton kind of looking for something to do in this matchup, and I don't think it has too much. It can die to Charizard, it can not do anything to Blissey if those count as purposes. And indeed, it fulfills one of those purposes. There is the Fire Blast crit. Obviously didn't matter there. Magneton out of here, and UD further behind, 5-3. So Umbry looking pretty good in this game to force a Game 3. Though there is a critical hit there that puts Blissey in the danger zone. So that's going to change things up a little bit. Umbry is forced now to double back to T-Tar. And Hidden Power going to bounce off. There might be an Earthquake, but like I said, I think it's a more defensive Gyara, so there's no chance to kill. But Rock Slide comes up well short as well. So like I said, I think it's a fat Gyara there, and he's going to be in no trouble. Good play for UD to double the Doug trio there. It does have to eat a super effective Hidden Power, as it turns out. So Hidden Power, I guess, Grass. UD with a lucky flinch there, by the way, would have lost the Doug trio. He locked Rock Slide to make it so Umbry couldn't go to Charizard or Zapdos as the follow-up, but the risk is what if you don't kill the Tar, which indeed he didn't, but he gets bailed out by a flinch. So now it's going to leave a 2-4 situation with Umbry still in the lead. She's looking to force that third game, whereas UD obviously would like to close it out 2-0, but this Gyarados, even with rest, is not going to beat Zapdos, so the last one for UD is going to have to be something that does. And I don't know if Claydol is that Mon. It can do more than nothing to it with Psychic, and of course it could just boom on it. Ice Beam is what we're going to go for. Usually they don't carry those, but I guess it makes sense on this team. So that's good against Zapdos, and it can randomly freeze the Charizard or anything else on Umbry's team, so I guess there's a chance for UD here. Umbry is certainly ahead in this late game, but we're not done just yet. UD's got a shot to rally back and get the 2-0. Here's the Doll. And Hidden Power, 39%. Certainly Claydol cannot take too many more of those. Now the Gyara's back. And Zapdos did not stay. Gonna BP the Intimidate along with him. Not super relevant in this case. Blissey here going to attempt to get a soft boiled off. And she does. Alrighty, Blissey back to healthy. And Umbry in a good position still. Wakes up for Hidden Power, doesn't find the crit that Gyarados would have been fishing for. Thunderbolt going to take it out, and now it's only Claydol, and I believe we are about to head to a Game 3. Earthquake. Yeah, not even bothering with Soft Boil, let's just get this over with. She clicks Ice Beam. EQ again, and we should be just a turn or two away from wrapping this up. We know that Zapdos has Hidden Power, so pending a crit or freeze Ice Beam here, we're going to be done. And indeed we get neither. So Zapdos is able to just Hidden Power one more time. And with that, Umbry is going to send us to a third game. Interesting series so far. Very hacksy game 1, especially that end game. And then in game 2, not the team that I was expecting from Umbry. Did not seem like a great matchup from UD. And yeah, it's going to send us to a third game. This could easily have been a 2-0 for Umbry, given the Game 1 hacks, but we'll see. It's never as simple as that. Here is the third game, UD and Umbry. This is, like I said, for a spot in the round 3 winners bracket, which is a bye, as opposed to going down to the lower bracket where you have to play every round indefinitely until you either win the tournament or get eliminated. Two very different fates. One of these things is not like the other. Real quick, enjoying the tournament, enjoying the video, please consider subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already. Please consider hitting the like button. It takes you less time than me saying this sentence for you to click it, and it helps. Thank you very much. Here's game 3. Breloom on the bottom for UD and Salamence on the top for Umbry. And she doubles back to Hera. She is really mixing it up. I have given her a hard time in the past for playing stall and only stall, but she does mix it up every once in a while, and that's really valuable. So she's got a men's Hera team looking like some kind of physical or mixed offense. UD did land a crit flamethrower there, which certainly matters. Well, Wish could make it matter less, and UD now gets unlucky, missing a Toxic, so, hey, things even out. And now they don't even out. Now we've got a Flamethrower burn. So we've got some hacksy early game stuff. We've got a crit, we've got a Toxic miss, we've got a Flamethrower burn. Lots of nonsense early on in this one. Now, it is a special Wishments, which might not even have Brick Break, so like the burn may not be the most crippling thing in the world. It might just be residual damage rather than a massive attack reduction. But still, it matters, and it obviously makes the Ments worse. So we'll see how this plays out. Umbry's been really stubborn staying in with this Ments here. She's going to finally switch it out now and goes to Lax. Takes the Flamethrower fine. 22%, especially in a sandless game, is nothing. And it's a Shadow Ball, interestingly. Maybe thinking Gara's going to come in immediately, but that's not what happens. It's a Fortress for UD, getting a Lair down. Now Psychic and a very curious Boom. And there's no Dugtrio follow-up either. I thought if he was going to explode there, I thought maybe there would just be a Dougie follow-up. That would have been a great trade. You get the Fortress and a Lair of Spikes in exchange for the Metagross. That seems fine. But there's no Dugtrio in the back for UD. So after spiking up once, he simply 47% explodes into the meta. Does he really just have no switch whatsoever into what looks like a mixed meta, since it did show Psychic? Is that just a poke that his team cannot handle? Awkward if so. That there must not be a bulky water, right? Really interesting. I don't know what that says about UD's team, but apparently mixed meta is a mon that he just cannot handle. We'll see if that explosion comes back to bite him, but once again, it is Umbry with the lead here. It feels like Umbry has been ahead, especially in the early games, for most of the series. In fact, it feels as a whole that Umbry has been ahead at most times in most games throughout the series. Let's not dismiss what just happened there. Flygon just missed 2 different Toxic against Kuhn, so that obviously matters. There's definitely been luck in this series as well. Let's not downplay that. But nevertheless, I do feel that Umbry has been ahead in most of all 3 games. She really looks good in this series. UD is not out of it, though, by any means. There's the Spore for Doll. Yeah, I mean, if it's like Focus Punch plus HP Ghost or Bug, the Breloom could do some work here. But instead, UD doubles back to Moltres. Doll stays asleep. And there's hidden power. You've got to think grass, which is the standard, to hit the Suicune. But if it's a non-rest Coon, which it could be, having shown Ice Beam, then obviously those 2 different Toxic misses from the Flygon onto the Coon could really end up mattering. Sky Uppercut really doesn't do that much there. Ice Beam ends it. UD is going to really need some Aerodactyl magic here. This one's so far the least close game out of the 3. UD does finally get on the board via a double edge here, but now the meta that UD apparently had no switch into, like this Moltres, I'm not clear why that wasn't switched in to what he thought was a Psychic. I don't know about that Boom. I really don't. It didn't seem that exciting. But man, the Coon here is just sitting there mocking him. Haha, no Toxic. Yeah, This one I think is going to end not super close. A crit necessary here just to extend the game, and that's not going to do it. It's just going to be a surf, and that's going to be it. Now, had the crit come down, would that have finished it? Metagross is outsped and killed. Heracross is presumably outsped and killed. And then it just comes down to the Claydol. So, there actually was a chance there, not a great one, but a chance, that if UD had gotten the crit there, he actually could have still won this game. Because the Meta and the Hera both would have died to flamethrowers, and then it just comes down to the Doll and the Moltres interaction, which I think Moltres actually wins a lot of the time. Now, obviously, you don't fodder Hera and Meta before going to the Doll to give the Doll the option to just wake up and boom on it, but he only could have taken maybe 2 HP grasses, depending on the spread of both, and depending on the nature of the Moltres, it's possible that the Claydol can only take 1. So even though it's going to look not super close here, even though it is going to end with a 4-0, this is actually a closer late game than it may have appeared. Like I said, had Moltres landed a crit on this Coon, and it comes down to the Moltres against the Meta, the Doll, and the Heracross, there's actually a chance that Moltres just gets there anyway. So a really haxy series as a whole. This game 1 endgame was ridiculous. UD got really lucky to get this one that he probably shouldn't have. This one was interesting. It felt just like a bad team matchup for UD. And then this third game, this felt like the least close, but there were definitely some hacks. Like I said, I think the non-toxics on the Coon very well could have mattered if it's a non-rest Coon, which it looks like it might have been. Given how low the Coon is here at the end, it would have died had it been toxic, so it actually would have come down to the Moltres against these other 3 pokes, and it would have just been a matter of whether or not the Doll wakes up and booms. So it's actually a lot closer than it appeared. But Haxie series as a whole, it is going to be Umbry with a 2-0. Really great for her. Like I said, she went out in her debut in CALLOUS Invitational with a 1-2 last year, but she's not going to do that this year. 2-0 start, where you want to be, and she's going to have the next round off. She's going to have a bye. UD, on the other hand, drops to what is an increasingly monstrous lower bracket, and he's going to have to fight his way through that if he would like to make money in CALLOUS Invitational for the second time. Alrighty, like I said, I already asked you guys to hit the like button. I appreciate it. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.